Hey guys, welcome to Dad Devotionals. This is a special episode of the podcast called Orthodox at Work. Orthodox at Work is a new series that provides an opportunity to discuss how to best live out our Orthodox Christian faith in the workplace and your business for entrepreneurs as well. I'll be doing a series of these episodes with Deacon Sean Reid, who was a guest in episode 45 of the podcast. He will be my co-host / main guest throughout this series, which will be released on the last Monday of each month. As you'll recall, Sean is a deacon in the Canadian Archdiocese of the Orthodox Church in America. He's also president and head coach at Arrowhead Coaching and Facilitation Solutions. It's a mouthful that I got to make sure I remember. And you'll also recognize him with the St. Amelia Homeschool podcast on Ancient Faith Radio. Sean, welcome back. Thanks so much for being here again.
Great to be here.
So our topic today is dealing with, as we all are for, I don't know, I guess up to, by the time of this release, it'll be about 3, 4, 5 months for some people dealing with coronavirus. And our topic is dealing with work-life challenges during this COVID-19 pandemic, which for some could last throughout the rest of the year, maybe even into 2021. What are just some general tips you have for us as we get started here?
Yeah, I mean, first, the first it's more of an observation, and I think this will ring true to a lot of your listeners and viewers. A lot of guys, especially right now, are feeling helpless. There's so much going on. We're getting bombarded from, in the media and social media and with all of these COVID-19 news updates, and nobody really knows what's going on. It seems like nobody. 1 minute you're reading one thing and it says COVID works like this, and the next minute you're reading another thing and it says COVID works exactly the opposite of what you just read 2 minutes ago. It's really confusing, and for guys especially who want to solve the problem, who want to fix whatever is broken. This is really complicated, and what's happening for a lot of guys, certainly a lot of men that I coach, is we kind of feel overwhelmed and confused and helpless at the end of the day. So what the first thing right off the bat that I encourage my clients to really focus on is just in this moment, especially in this moment, focus on what is within your control. Which usually starts with yourself and how you respond to the situation and how you react to or proactively address the things that are coming at you. So focus on what you can control is the number one tip I have.
Sure. So what about how we can help other people? Because at the same time, there's a lot of folks that depend on us. I'm sure for a lot of the guys that you coach, they're also leaders, not only in their families, but then also in their places of work, if not, in just a regular corporate environment or a government agency or something like that, or, their own business. And we're all dealing with those effects. Maybe they've had to lay some people off, maybe they've been laid off themselves. Who knows? So how can we as men, with our unique circumstances and the way, what we bring to the table, how can we best care for our fellow coworkers as well as our families during something like this?
Sure. So I just not long ago did a video on this, which people can see on my website as well. I call it the 3 R's. So this is a strategy that we can use, especially that men can use, but really anybody, but that we can use to get that kind of control and to feel like we have that sense of control over the things that we can control in our life. So the 3 R's are roles, responsibilities, and relationships. And what I encourage my clients to do, and any our listeners and viewers to do, is to get a paper or a journal or whatever you use, and every morning write down 3 columns on a page. And at the top of the first column on the left, write roles. On the top of this middle column, responsibilities. And on top of the right column, relationships. And under the roles, I want you to ask, what are the key roles that I play in my life? Father, husband, employee or maybe executive. Maybe you've got a role in your church, maybe you're on the parish council, or you're leading a ministry team, or you're part of the clergy. What are the key roles in your life that you lead every day? Write those down. The next thing I want you to do is write down the key responsibilities, top 3 responsibilities today that you need to live up to within each of those roles. So, okay, so in my church life, I have to file that, maybe I'm the treasurer in my church life. I got to file that notice with the IRS, around our charitable status today or something like that. Or in my family life as a dad, I got to go and spend some time going for a walk with my daughter. What are those key responsibilities? And in work, of course, in work life, there will be any number of those responsibilities. So as a supervisor, I need to check in today with my employee over here who has been struggling a little bit with some of the stress around all this COVID stuff. I need to check in intentionally and make sure he's doing okay. So what are those 2, 3 responsibilities under each role that you have to accomplish today? And the third is related to that. What are the 2 or 3 relationships that are key to those roles that you need to invest in or check in on or respond to in order to in order to support your activity in that role? So again, it might be, as a father, got to check in with the kids. As a husband, I might check in with my wife, obviously, family members. Those are the obvious ones. In the work life, it might be, maybe there's a supplier that you work with on a regular basis that is really important to your business and you're important to their business. Mm-hmm. Just check in. Maybe today's the day I got to check in with that supplier, just see how they're doing, how things are going. Is there anything on my side that I can help them with, or anything, ways I can adjust how I'm doing things that might be of a help to them so we can help each other? What are those key relationships that we depend on each day to kind of get through things, and be intentional about investing in those each day? So if we do that, if we focus on really investing in the key roles, responsibilities, and relationships that we play every day, like starting our day, writing down what we're going to do in each of those areas, we will come away with a much clearer plan of how we can actually be useful and constructive, so that at the end of the day, we can look at, absolutely, I did this, this, this. I didn't get to this, but I did this, this, and this. And I've got a clear blueprint of what I have accomplished. I come away feeling a lot more like I've been useful, like I've been helpful today. We're helpful all the time. Our problem is that we don't realize it. Right. Unless we get intentional about really calling out what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and then taking a log and reflecting on the fact that we've done those things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it also goes back into that locus of control that I think, like you alluded to, we need to have during something like this. There was so much uncertainty. We need to grasp onto something. And then obviously for a lot of us, if you're listening to this, most likely you're an Orthodox Christian. So you're going to be grasping onto your faith. So, there's a buzzword that seems to be floating around over the last 10 years or so. It's more new agey, I think, but it's the concept of self-care. So, but if you think about this from an Orthodox perspective, and amidst, what's going on, I want you to put on your deacon hat for a second here and, tell us, what does that look like? What can we do? What are things that we can do throughout our workday, not just in the morning, not just before bed, not just at a meal? What can we focus on to, make sure we're in a much better mindset? Because I think that's what prayer does. For instance, that's what prayer does for me. It puts me in a much better mindset with which to deal with the world, trying to deal with the world as maybe God would. So what's a tip or two that you can offer in that regard?
Yeah, well, this is, so so thankfully we're not making this up, right? So there have been, millennia of holy men and women who have gone before us who have already figured this question out, right? And you look at any example of saintly monastics, or not actually even non-monastics, and how they operate. If you read the lives of the saints, you'll see those habits. You'll see the kind of habits that we're talking about.
Mm.
But there are a few that are pretty obvious. One of them is taking time to pray or make the sign of the cross before any significant task. Really any task. But we're weak, people. We need to start small, right? So maybe it's just one major project. Again, like if you go through and you take that time at the beginning of your morning to identify what are the key roles, responsibilities, relationships, and maybe you put a bright red circle around one of them. Like that one is going to be a challenge.
Mm.
Maybe that's the one that you make an intentional plan to pray before you execute that plan, before you execute that initiative. We have to start small, right? Because most of us don't have any habit like that. We like to think that we do, but we don't have any kind of habit of praying while we're working, really, if we're being honest. So why not just start with one key thing every day that we put a bright red circle around and say, right before I go and do that, I'm going to take 2 minutes and I'm going to pray. I'm going to say the Our Father. I'm going to say the Trisagian prayers, or I'm going to say, a prayer rope, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, whatever it is. Or I'm going to ask the prayers of my patron at that time, or another saint whose intercession is perfect for whatever that task happens to be. But just one thing. Why don't we just start with just one challenging task every day that we need to turn over to God and see what happens?
Absolutely. I'm reminded, as you were speaking there, I was reminded of my interview with Sam Cox, who's the producer of New Men, the documentary on the Orthodox monastery in West Virginia. And when you watch it, naturally what monks do when they're working, they're praying the Jesus prayer. And it's one thing to conceptualize that in your mind, but then to actually see it carried out while the guy's painting the fence white, it's like they really do while they're working, they are praying that prayer. And maybe it's hard for some of the things we're doing. Obviously, you're not really we could pray together, but while we're doing this interview, it's not really something you do as a single person. But if you have it in the back of your mind constantly, you keep doing, you keep making that habit. Your heart prays for you. Jesus is praying in you while you're working. At some point, you get to that. You get to that pinnacle if you do it enough and you build that habit. James Clear, secular guy, but he says get 1% better each day. If we can get 1% better in doing the Jesus prayer, or just doing the sign of the cross before a task, we'll be that much better. We'll be that much closer. And also don't chastise yourself if maybe you missed it that day, or maybe you missed it in that moment. Give yourself grace in this process as you develop. So I think that's a great sentiment for us to take. And I like the 3 R's. I think that's really helpful. It really gets you in that mindset. And then if you do it from a prayerful perspective, you're just gonna be much better off for it.
One plug for a book that was very helpful for me in this area of injecting prayer into work. A book by the name of a fellow named Dr. Daniel Opperwall. And the book is called Layman in the Desert. And in that book, it's got all kinds of great insights into family life and other things like that. But it has a chapter on work, and it has some really practical advice based on the councils of the conferences of St. John Cassian, on how we can inject prayer into our work. Some really just practical, simple stuff. It's a great book. Dr. Opperwall's a good friend of mine, and I highly recommend it to your viewers and listeners.
You beat me to the question. That was going to be my next question to you. So I appreciate you answering that. You anticipated it. Last thing, is there anything that you've done personally during this whole thing, or maybe there's been another issue with maybe just personally in your dealings in a job or whatever that you found just work? It's something that's a go-to, no matter whether a pandemic's going on or not. But it's something that it's a process. It's maybe it's something like the 3 R's, but it works for Sean Reid and whatever he does, no matter what. Do you have something like that?
You know what one of the habits that I developed during this crisis is reading the Psalter more intentionally. And again, we start just like you talking about. I don't start by throwing like 250 pounds on the bar, So I read one psalm, or even if it's one of those long ones, one page of one psalm every morning at the end of my morning prayer. And I use, personally, I use the translation from Holy Transfiguration Monastery, but there's lots of different good translations out there. But those psalms are, well, they're prayers, obviously, but they're so authentic, and they're so layered with both the authenticity of a male leader talking to God, King David, but also there's so much theology, and there's so much revelation about who God is in that same breath. And so I have just enjoyed, contemplatively but attentively reading, a psalm or a page of a psalm every morning. So I highly recommend that habit if your listeners are looking for another one to add to the mix.
No, that's great. I do appreciate it. I actually use my Ancient Faith prayer book, and there's just I'll have to list it. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I'll have to list it in the show notes. But there is one go-to prayer that I've prayed over the last I would say 2 weeks, and it's not one of those things you usually pray 3 times, but I found when I do it 3 times, I have a tendency to get frustrated or get stressed or whatever. But doing that in the beginning of my day, it just helps me set the tone. And I don't know, I just get put into a different mindset. And I kind of slow myself down instead of overreacting to situations. But so that's another one another resource we can offer listeners as well. Fantastic. Sean, this has been great. I'm really excited that this is the first one we're doing of these. And I think we're going to, just based off of this episode alone, I think we're going to have a lot of great stuff to offer guys. And it's going to be a blessing to people, because I think that's what we need. We need, men like us just having these conversations and then just putting it out there to the world, and just, exactly. Kind of just sharing and trying to be a source of support. So again, thank you for doing this with me.
I'm delighted to do it. We got it. We do have to support each other. So I'm excited to start this with you, David.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, God bless you. I wish you just have a great week. And everyone, we will see you in the next episode. God bless. This is Orthodox at Work.